Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. Georgia host Ole Miss this week, and it's another one where I've actually banned Georgia from my list of betting, not simply because they don't cover or whatever, which they haven't covered. They've covered not as often as you'd normally think for a team that's good, but I can never get it right. I can never get it right. I like whatever I'm feeling. I should just bet the opposite. But then if I do that, I guarantee you I'll miss it again. So I have just banned them from betting, but Ole Miss is a team that I've thought ever since that Alabama game they were going to drop one of these games. They almost dropped it to Texas A&M yesterday or on Saturday. They had a pretty close game there with Arkansas, but they just keep winning, and that's there's something to that. Jake, how are you feeling going into this big matchup? Because to me, I still think Georgia should handle them. The one big game Ole Miss played at Alabama, they got absolutely just physically dominated. And I still think that that's a problem for this team in big games. But at the same time, they keep winning. Lane Kiffin, maybe draws up something, gets some big plays, and their defense holds up. How do you see it going?
Lane Kiffin, he's gonna. One thing you can say about this guy is he's gonna pull out all the stops in a game like this. I think that's something you can definitely expect. But I don't think. I think Georgia's a matchup nightmare for Ole Miss. That's not me saying that they're going to cover. That's not me saying they're going to win by a ton. But I think they're a matchup problem. If you look at Ole Miss, they're a bad team offensively on third down. They have a good offense. Third down, they're not very good. Their defense gives up a lot of explosive plays. Georgia actually this year has a better offense than Ole Miss. They certainly have a better defense. But the thing is this is Ole Miss coming in here as a top 10 team. Hopefully the atmosphere is going to be a little bit better last week than it was at Mizzou. Last week was homecoming, a little more of the wine and cheese crowd. Not a very loud stadium. Hopefully a 7:00 game will change that. But I definitely respect Ole Miss as an opponent. I'm not saying, oh, this is same old Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin can't win the big one, yada yada. They have a very good offense. Quinshon Judkins is an absolute animal, one of the best running backs in all of college football. His name's escaping me. The wide receiver Trey Harris. Trey Harris is phenomenal. Jackson Dart, solid quarterback. But Ole Miss is another team like Missouri. I talked about last week. Missouri is a very heavily penalized team. Ole Miss is as well. They struggle on third down. And, basically, if their weaknesses shine in this game, Georgia will probably thump them. But I think this will be a close game.
Yeah, I think the over is a play. I thought it was last week. That didn't hit. I did call Missouri right. I feel like I'm seeing this Georgia team good. It's 2 weeks in a row. I've got him right. And I think Ole Miss covers this week. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a similar game as this Missouri game, but they'll probably backdoor cover, like I said. That's because their offense is for real. I do think, and listen, Georgia's offense is for real. I'm not trying to diminish that, but we just saw Ole Miss's offense go against a very good A&M defense, and kind of handle business. And to your point about a matchup, they're very physical, similar to Bama in terms of Bama just dominated Ole Miss, and Ole Miss responded to maybe the best defensive line in the nation with A&M in terms of recruits, in terms of status. A&M probably has the best defensive line in the country, and Ole Miss handled them up front. So I really think that Ole Miss is a better team now, much better than they were in that Alabama game. And you mentioned it first. And I think the most important thing is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is going to pull out every single
He's
trick
got to
in the
keep
book.
himself. He cannot revert to Lane Kiffin going forward on fourth down on his own 25 or something, because if they make one of those mistakes, Georgia will eat them alive. That's the thing. And I think he knows that. Maybe, but we've seen that before. We've seen that they've been competing with Alabama, and he'll go for it on his own 10-yard line or something crazy. And then all of a sudden it snowballs, and now you're down 21 just like that. It's just that quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm while you guys are talking, I'm trying to play the game in my head and wonder how it goes. My gut tells me that Georgia should handle this game by 2 touchdowns. I think they were better than what they showed against Missouri. I think Missouri's kind of a weird game though. And you talked about the crowd. I think the players feel the same way. I know they had a 12 by their name. I don't know how much you're getting up for Missouri. I think they get up for this Ole Miss game. I think they're better. I think they're way better in the trenches. I think that's going to matter. I think they're going to be able to run the ball at will on Ole Miss. I think they're going to, and they have, you've talked about it, Jake. They haven't been fantastic at running the ball. I think that changes this week. I think they're going to be able to physically dominate Ole Miss up front. It's really just about slowing down this Ole Miss offense. And I do think they should be. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I don't think Georgia has the defense where they're just going to shut down good offenses and hold them to, less than 20 points like they used to be able to do at will. But I think their offense is good enough to where, you're going to look up. They're going to have close to 40 points, and Ole Miss is going to score something like 24, and they're going to win this game handily. That's what I think. Now, I do want to ask this question, though. As far as college football landscape in the playoff, Alabama basically, as long as they take care of business at Kentucky and Auburn, they're in the SEC championship. How does Ole Miss factor in this thing if they somehow pull off the upset on the road? Because right now they're sitting at 8? And then they win this game on the road in Georgia, and their only loss is at Alabama on the road, but they don't get in the SEC championship.
Yeah, I want to make a comment real quick before we move on to that, and I'm glad you brought this up because I do want to talk about it. Kirby Smart obviously has a lot of pelts on his wall. The only one, never beat Ole Miss. Only team in the SEC he has not beaten. If you remember 2016, and Hugh Freeze absolutely thumped him in his first year.
I do remember.
Haven't played him since. So Ole Miss is the only one he has not beaten yet. So you talk about motivation for that game. I think that'll definitely play into it, at least on his side. But I mean, if Ole Miss wins this game, they absolutely have to be in the conversation, and it's one of the we've seen this before. I mean, it happened. It was Ohio State last year, wasn't it? They didn't play in the Big Ten championship.
No.
Similar situation. I do think we will see some more losses out of some of these contenders. Florida State, if Florida State makes it unscathed, I'll be surprised. I'm sorry. I just don't believe in Florida State. I think they could lose to Florida. I think they could lose to Miami. Either one. Like they have Keon. I think Keon Coleman is maybe even the best player in the country. He's definitely up there. He's up there with Brock Bowers to me. He's incredible. But I'm not inspired by Florida State whatsoever. I don't think they make it unscathed. They might because they just haven't really played anybody. Washington, I think, will lose to Oregon if they play again. Oregon could lose another game. They play USC this weekend. I think it's going to get real chummy. And at a certain point, if Ole Miss is up there at 5 or 6 going into conference championship weekend, and let's say Alabama loses to Georgia or Georgia loses to Alabama, yeah, I could see them sneaking in and taking that 4th spot.
See, I don't think so at all. And I said it yesterday, and I said that some fan base is going to be upset and feel like the committee is out to get them. And it could be a 1-loss Ole Miss team, or it could be a 1-loss Georgia team who, goes all the way to the SEC championship, loses to Alabama or something, because let's say Michigan or Ohio State wins out, whichever one of them gets in Big Ten champion. Let's say Florida State. And I know Chase loves to say make fun of the people who say the undefeated game. But in my eyes, I mean, Michigan or Ohio State, one of them is going undefeated. I think Florida State is underrated in terms of everybody's just forgot about the early parts of the season. One Boston College slip up, which I don't hold against them. I think Florida State is a very good team, well-rounded football team. I think Oregon or Washington is going to come out of the Pac-12, and then you got Texas potentially coming out of the Big 12. So then you got one SEC team coming out. I think that a 1-loss Ole Miss team is going to get snubbed, unfortunately. And I just don't think it's going to be just Ole Miss. I think it could very well be a 2-loss Alabama team sitting here thinking, well, we're better than them. And they may be right. But, the games are played in Alabama or Ole Miss or Georgia. Somebody is going to be a butthurt fan base and thinking the committee is out to get them. This is just one of those years where it would be like, God, I wish we had a 12-team playoff, because there are so many teams that deserve a spot in the playoff.
It's interesting you bring up Texas, too, because that's a common opponent. They both went into Tuscaloosa, and they had 2 very different outcomes. So that's another thing that hurts Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. But still a lot of football left to be played. So teams could lose at any time. Coming up after the break, MLB trade rumors has a couple predictions for the Braves. We're going to discuss it.